The massive alien vessel drifted silently through the cold void of space, its engines dead and its hull scarred from a recent encounter with an asteroid field. This was the Luminous Journey flagship of a refugee fleet carrying the last 30,000 survivors of a dying world. Commander Tal stared at the viewscreen with 4 weary eyes, his gray skin pallid from stress and lack of proper nutrition. The fleet's 7th-generation ships had been traveling for decades, but now they faced extinction due to catastrophic system failures. "Status report," Tal demanded, his voice rough from too many sleepless cycles. Officer Mick looked up from her console, her antenna drooping in distress. "Life support is at 28% and falling. Food synthesis units are completely offline. The other ships report similar conditions. Without assistance, we have perhaps 20 days before critical failure." Tal nodded grimly. "And our distress signals?" "No response from any advanced civilizations," Mick replied. "However, we are detecting unusual transmission patterns from the 3rd planet in this system." Tal moved to the observation port and gazed at the blue-green world growing steadily larger in their view. It was beautiful, wrapped in swirling white clouds and vast blue oceans. According to their scans, it teemed with life and technological activity. But was it advanced enough to help them? More importantly, would its inhabitants even want to? "Send another distress signal," Tal ordered. "This time, direct it specifically toward that planet." On Earth, the morning began like any other at the Global Deep Space Monitoring Station in Nevada. Tom Wilson sipped his coffee while running routine checks on the array of satellite dishes pointed toward the stars. At 53, he had spent most of his career listening to the empty silence of space. After decades without meaningful contact, most of humanity had stopped expecting visitors. The computer chirped, pulling Tom from his thoughts. He set down his mug and checked the alert. His eyes widened. "Director Park," he called out, his voice cracking with excitement. "You need to see this." Director Park hurried over, her brow furrowed. "What is it, Wilson?" "A signal, Director. Non-random, clearly artificial, and definitely not one of ours." Tom's fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up detailed analytics. "It's coming from just beyond Mars' orbit and moving inward." Park leaned closer, her professional composure momentarily forgotten. "Is this first contact?" "I believe so," Tom whispered. "And based on these readings, I think it's a distress call." Within hours, every major space agency and government was notified. Military satellites quickly located the source. 7 enormous vessels, each nearly 2 miles long, drifting toward Jupiter's orbital path. Initial analysis suggested they were damaged and losing power. President Rivera addressed an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council via secure video link. Her expression was solemn as satellite imagery displayed behind her showed the alien fleet. "Ladies and gentlemen, after centuries of speculation, we now have definitive proof that we are not alone in the universe," she said. "However, this historic moment comes with an immediate humanitarian crisis. These ships appear to be in distress, and their trajectory will take them into Jupiter's gravity well within 90 days. According to our scientists, such an encounter would be catastrophic for vessels in their condition." The Russian representative leaned forward. "How do we know this isn't some form of trick? A prelude to invasion?" "We don't," Rivera admitted. "But our analysts have partially decoded their transmissions. They believe these are refugee ships carrying families and children. If we do nothing, we condemn thousands of beings to death." China's ambassador nodded slowly. "If they are indeed refugees seeking aid, refusing to help would be unconscionable." "Then we are agreed," Rivera said. "Humanity's first official act toward another species will be one of compassion. I propose we launch Operation Starbridge, a multinational rescue mission to save these travelers from the stars." As the council debated logistics, high above Earth, Commander Tal watched the small blue planet with growing hope as unfamiliar signals began to reach their communications array. Perhaps, against all odds, They had found salvation among the stars. 3 days after first contact, the world had changed forever. News channels showed nothing but the alien fleet. People gathered in homes, bars, and public squares to watch the continuous updates. Religious leaders offered prayers and interpretations, while scientists worked around the clock analyzing the limited data available. In Washington, D.C., Admiral Roy Franklin stood before the hastily assembled International Space Coalition, his weathered face serious under the harsh lights. Behind him, a large screen displayed the 7 massive alien ships, their hulls reflecting the distant sun. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be direct," Franklin said, his deep voice filling the room. "These vessels will reach Jupiter's gravitational pull in 87 days. If that happens, they'll either be pulled into the gas giant or slingshot into deep space. Either way, everyone aboard will die." The room fell silent as the reality sank in. Franklin continued, pointing to diagrams of the alien vessels. "Our best estimates suggest each ship carries between 4,000 to 5,000 individuals. We've made progress translating their language, enough to confirm they are refugees. Their home world was destroyed by what appears to be a natural disaster, possibly a nearby star going supernova." Dr. Elena Diaz, head of xenobiology at the European Space Agency, stood up. "What about their physical requirements? Can they survive in our atmosphere?" "Unknown," Franklin replied. "But their ships maintain conditions not wildly different from Earth's. Slightly higher oxygen content, similar pressure. They're carbon-based life forms, which gives us a starting point." General Zhang from China's Space Command frowned. "The question remains, do we have the technology to help them? Their ships are far larger than anything we've ever built." Franklin nodded to Dr. Robert Miller, who stepped forward with a tablet. The chief engineer looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes red-rimmed but alert. "We've analyzed their propulsion systems from the data they've shared," Miller explained. "They use a form of ion drive, conceptually similar to ours, but vastly more sophisticated. The good news is we understand the basic principles. The bad news is the scale of repairs needed exceeds anything we've attempted in space." President Rivera, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "What do you need to make this work, Dr. Miller?" Miller took a deep breath. "Every space-capable nation would need to contribute. We need to launch at least 20 support vessels with specialized equipment. We'd need to repurpose satellites, space station components, whatever we can get up there quickly. And we'd need at least 500 of our best engineers and technicians willing to work in space for several months." The room erupted in voices. Some argued it was impossible, too expensive, too risky. Others insisted it was humanity's moral obligation. The debate grew heated until a soft voice cut through the noise. "May I speak?" All eyes turned to Dr. Maya Patel, who rarely spoke at these meetings. The linguist had been working non-stop on translations since first contact. "I've been communicating directly with their leadership," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. "They call themselves the Lorkai. They'd been traveling for 3 generations, almost 70 Earth years. The people on those ships have never known a home beyond those metal walls." She tapped her tablet, and a new image appeared on the screen. It showed what appeared to be a nursery, with small alien children huddled together, their large eyes filled with what could only be described as fear. "This was sent yesterday," Patel continued. "Their life support systems are failing. Their children are suffering. They have nowhere else to go." The room fell silent again, but this time the quality of the silence had changed. President Rivera stood up. "The cost of this mission will be enormous. The technical challenges seem almost insurmountable. But throughout history, humanity has risen to impossible challenges when they mattered most." She looked around the room. "I believe this is one of those moments." Admiral Franklin nodded. "If we succeed, we save 30,000 lives and make first contact with a new species on the best possible terms. If we fail trying..." He straightened his shoulders. Well, I'd rather be remembered as the people who tried and failed than those who never tried at all. The vote that followed wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. Operation Starbridge would proceed with full international backing. Humanity's greatest space rescue mission had officially begun. The Kennedy Space Center buzzed with activity unlike anything seen since the early Mars missions. Launch pads that had stood dormant for years now hosted massive rockets being prepped for immediate departure. Engineers, mechanics, and astronauts worked in endless shifts, their faces showing equal measures of exhaustion and determination. Captain Jack Reed watched the controlled chaos from a viewing platform, his experienced eyes noting the precision despite the hurried pace. At 42, Reed had logged more space hours than almost anyone alive, yet nothing in his career had prepared him for this mission. Quite a sight, isn't it? Dr. Anna Lee said, joining him at the railing. The xenobiologist had been selected as part of the first contact team for her brilliant work with extremophile organisms. Reed nodded. 17 launches in 10 days. I never thought I'd see anything like it. 19 now, Lee corrected. The Chinese just confirmed 2 more heavy lifters from Jiuquan, and the Indians have repurposed a communications satellite into a power relay. Reed whistled softly. Humanity can move mountains when we need to. Below them, the massive supply ship Endeavour was being loaded with specially designed docking equipment. It would carry the components needed to create a bridge between human technology and the alien ship systems. The plan was ambitious. First, stabilize the Lorcae life support systems, then repair their propulsion drives enough to change course away from Jupiter. Reed's communicator buzzed. Captain Reed, please report to Mission Control. Final briefing in 15 minutes. Duty calls, he said to Lee. See you on the dark side. 48 hours later, Reed stood on the bridge of the Horizon *, humanity's newest and largest spacecraft. Originally designed as a Mars transit vehicle, it had been hastily repurposed as the command center for Operation Lifeline. Through the main viewport, Earth grew smaller by the minute as they accelerated toward their rendezvous with the alien fleet. All vessels reporting ready, Captain, First Officer Martinez announced. The supply caravan is maintaining formation, and the engineering fleet is 30 minutes behind us as planned. Reed nodded. What's our ETA to the Lorcae fleet? 36 hours, sir. They're drifting at approximately 18,000 miles per hour toward Jupiter's orbit. The ship's AI displayed a holographic trajectory map. Reed studied it carefully. The timing would be tight. They needed to intercept, assess, and begin repairs quickly enough to change the fleet's course before Jupiter's gravity well became inescapable. Captain, the communications officer called out. We're receiving new telemetry from the alien flagship. Their primary life support system has suffered another failure. Oxygen levels are dropping on 3 of their 7 ships. Reed's jaw tightened. Push the engines to maximum safe output. Inform the medical ships to prepare for possible evacuation scenarios. Commander Tal watched the approaching human vessels with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The largest was tiny compared to even the smallest Lorcae ship, yet according to their communications, these small craft carried their salvation. They're accelerating, Officer Mick reported. New estimated arrival time is 28 hours. Tal's secondary heart fluttered with stress. Will we last that long? The ship's environmental engineer, Grell, shook his head. Sections 12 through 29 have been sealed to conserve oxygen. We've moved all young ones to the central chambers, but at current depletion rates. He didn't need to finish. Tal understood. Nearly 1,000 Lorcae would suffocate before the humans arrived unless something changed. What about the emergency hibernation chambers? Tal asked. Grell hesitated. They were designed for short-term use. Placing adults in hibernation for more than a few days risks brain damage. And the alternative is certain death, Tal said firmly. Begin hibernation protocols for all non-essential personnel immediately. Priority to those in the most oxygen-depleted sections. As crew members rushed to comply, Tal turned back to the view screen. The distant lights of the human ships had become slightly brighter. "Come on," he whispered to the approaching fleet. "Hurry." On the Horizon Asterisk, Reed received the latest transmission from the Lorkai ships. "They're putting people into hibernation to conserve oxygen," Dr. Lee translated. "Their situation is deteriorating faster than they initially reported." Reed made his decision instantly. "Tell engineering to prepare for emergency protocols. We're going to attempt first docking as soon as we arrive, not after the assessment phase." Martinez looked concerned. "Sir, that's extremely risky without—" "Note your objection, Martinez," Reed interrupted. "But those people are dying up there. We didn't come all this way to count bodies." He turned to the helm. "Push the engines beyond safety margins. I want to shave 8 hours off our arrival time." As the Horizon surged forward, leading humanity's rescue fleet, Reed knew they were racing against more than Jupiter's gravity now. They were racing against time itself. The human fleet approached the massive Lorkai vessels under emergency thrust. Captain Reeves stood transfixed as the alien ships filled the view screen, each one nearly 2 miles long, their hulls etched with intricate patterns that seemed both decorative and functional. Despite their obvious technological advancement, the ships showed clear signs of distress. Sections without power, damaged hull plates, and erratic venting of gases. "My God," whispered Martinez beside him. "They're city-sized." Reed nodded grimly. "And they're dying. Initiate docking procedures with the flagship. Alert the engineering teams to prepare for immediate deployment." The Horizon Asterisk maneuvered carefully alongside the Luminous Journey Asterisk, looking like a rowboat beside an ocean liner. Extending the newly designed universal docking mechanism was humanity's first technical gamble. It had been created based solely on scans and transmitted specifications from the Lorkai. Chief Engineer Mike Wilson's voice came through the comm system. "Docking collar in position, Captain. We're attempting to create a seal. Initial connection established. Pressure holding. We have green lights across all indicators." Reed exhaled slowly. "Prepare the first contact team. Full environmental suits with 6-hour oxygen supply." Dr. Anna Lee led the 5-person team through the airlock into the alien vessel. Despite extensive preparation, nothing could have prepared them for the reality of stepping aboard. The corridor was twice as tall as Earth standard, lit by soft blue lighting that pulsed subtly. The air, even through their suits' sensors, registered as breathable, but with a higher oxygen content. "Stay together," Lee reminded the team. "Remember your training." They moved forward cautiously, following the pre-arranged meeting coordinates. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that appeared to be a control center. Waiting for them were 3 Lorkai. Commander Tal stood slightly ahead of the others, his 4-armed body nearly 7 feet tall. His gray-blue skin had a slight luminescence under the ship's lighting, and the large eyes that dominated his face studied the humans intently. "Welcome," he said through the translation device. "You honor us with your bravery." Lee stepped forward. "We come to help. I am Dr. Anna Lee, cynobiologist. This is Chief Engineer Wilson, Medical Officer Chen, Systems Specialist Rodriguez, and Environmental Engineer Kumar." Tal gestured to his companions. "Officer Mick, our Communications Specialist, and Chief Engineer Grell." With introductions complete, they moved quickly to business. The humans removed portable diagnostic equipment from their packs, while Wilson interfaced his tablet with the ship's systems through an adapter built for this purpose. "These readouts are—" Wilson paused, his brow furrowed beneath his helmet visor. "I've never seen technology this advanced. Their power distribution system operates on principles I can barely understand." Grell moved beside him, towering over the human engineer. "Our primary fusion reactor suffered cascade failure when we passed through an unexpected radiation field 3 cycles ago. The secondary systems were never designed to handle full load." Wilson nodded, studying the alien schematics. "Our ships carry portable fusion generators, not as powerful as yours, but they might stabilize your life support while we work on the main systems. The problem, Rodriguez interjected, examining another display, is compatibility. Their power delivery system uses plasma conduits operating at temperatures our connectors can't handle. Engineer Kumar, who had been quietly examining a section of exposed wall circuitry, looked up suddenly. What if we don't connect directly to their main system? Look at these tertiary circuits. They operate at lower temperatures. We could feed power through these auxiliary systems instead. Grell's head tilted in what seemed to be surprise. Those are maintenance bypasses. They were not designed to carry significant load. But they could work as a bridge, Kumar insisted. We modify our connectors to interface with these bypasses, then reconfigure your internal distribution to accept our power format. Wilson ran calculations on his tablet. It's risky. If we miscalculate the conversion ratios, we could fry both our generators and their distribution network. Officer Mick, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Our children are running out of air. Risk is preferable to certainty of failure. The humans exchanged glances. Lee nodded. Let's do it. While the engineering team began their work, Dr. Chen accompanied Tall to the medical bay. The sight that greeted them was sobering. Hundreds of Lorcae in hibernation chambers, while others showed signs of oxygen deprivation. How many in hibernation? Chen asked, scanning the chambers with his medical equipment. 3,000 across all ships, Tall replied. But the chambers were not designed for long-term use. After 2 more days, neural damage becomes likely. Chen activated his comlink. Captain Reed, we need to accelerate the timeline, requesting immediate deployment of all medical ships and oxygen production units. Reed's voice came through clearly. Already underway, Doctor. The Mercy and Nightingale are preparing to dock with the secondary vessels now. How's the power transfer coming? We're about to find out, Chen replied, looking toward where Wilson and Kumar were making final adjustments to their makeshift power bridge. The future of 2 species now depended on whether human ingenuity could successfully interface with alien technology before time ran out. The temporary power bridge had been established for 3 days. Human engineers worked alongside Lorcae technicians throughout the refugee fleet, stabilizing life support systems and beginning the massive task of repairing the damaged propulsion systems. As immediate survival concerns lessened, opportunities for cultural exchange naturally emerged. Dr. Annalise sat in what the Lorcae called a rest garden, a large open area filled with carefully tended alien plants that helped recycle the ship's air. Across from her, Officer Mick demonstrated a flowing series of hand gestures that supplemented Lorcae speech. Our language has both verbal and physical components, Mick explained, her 4 hands moving in graceful patterns. This motion indicates respect for an elder's wisdom. This one shows appreciation for shared knowledge. Lee attempted to copy the movements, her human limitations making the gestures awkward. Mick clicked softly, the Lorcae equivalent of laughter. Not bad for someone with only 2 arms, she said kindly. I feel so inadequate, Lee admitted. Your species manages 4 limbs with such coordination. Mick's head tilted. Yet you accomplish remarkable feats with your 2. We watched your ships dock with ours, such precision. And your music. She gestured to where a small group of off-duty human engineers had gathered. One played a harmonica while others sang softly. Several young Lorcae children sat nearby, their large eyes wide with fascination. We have nothing like this, Mick continued. Our music is primarily percussion and wind instruments. The concept of harmony as you practice it is entirely new to us. Elsewhere on the ship, Chief Engineer Wilson and his Lorcae counterpart Grell studied holographic displays of the damaged propulsion systems. The principle is similar to our ion drives, Wilson said, but the scale and efficiency are beyond anything we've developed. Grell gestured to a specific component. The emitter array was damaged when we passed through the radiation belt. Without proper materials, repairs seemed impossible. Wilson scratched his beard thoughtfully. We might be able to reconfigure the spare parts from our ships. The materials are different, but the functionality could be adapted. Such creativity, Grell remarked. In our culture, engineers follow established protocols. Your willingness to improvise is unexpected. Wilson laughed. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When your back is against the wall, you try things you'd never consider otherwise. Against the wall. Grell's translation device seemed confused by the idiom. Sorry, it means when you have no other options. Grell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Wilson had learned indicated deep thought. Perhaps this is why you've survived on your world. Our historical records show most species that develop technology eventually become rigid in their thinking. In the ship's command center, Captain Reed met with Commander Tal and the leaders from the other refugee vessels. The conversation had moved beyond immediate rescue operations to longer-term plans. Jupiter's gravity well is still a threat, Reed explained, pointing to the trajectory display. Even with the emergency power we've provided, your ships can only achieve 30% of normal thrust. That won't be enough to escape without a course correction. Tal studied the display. What do you propose? A gravitational slingshot around Mars, Reed said. It's risky, but it could provide the additional velocity you need while conserving fuel. An older Lorcae that Reed hadn't met before spoke up. And if this works, where would we go? Our long-range scans found no suitable planets in this system. Reed exchanged glances with Dr. Lee, who had just entered the command center. They had discussed this possibility with Earth's leadership. We've identified potential options, Reed said carefully. There's a moon in our system, Titan, with conditions that might be adaptable to your needs with minimal terraforming. Alternatively, we could help you repair your ships completely for continued travel to another system. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Lorcae had been traveling for generations, seeking a home. Now they faced another critical decision. Tal looked around at his fellow leaders before responding. My people are tired, Captain Reed. 3 generations have known only ship life. The children you see were born in space, having never felt solid ground beneath their feet. His 4 eyes fixed on Reed. If your people are truly offering us sanctuary, we would be honored to accept. The mood in the room shifted perceptibly. What had begun as an emergency rescue was transforming into something far more significant. The first steps toward 2 species sharing a solar system. There will be challenges, Reed cautioned. Cultural adjustments on both sides. Tal made the Lorcae gesture for acceptance. As you humans say, necessity is the mother of invention. We will adapt together. Jupiter loomed large on the view screens, its swirling storm patterns both beautiful and menacing. In the command center of the Horizon Asterisk, Captain Reed studied the latest trajectory calculations with growing concern. Despite 2 weeks of non-stop work, the combined human Lorcae engineering teams had managed to restore only partial propulsion to the massive refugee ships. The numbers don't lie, said Martinez, pointing to the red warning indicators. At current acceleration, 3 of their ships will still be caught in Jupiter's gravity well. Reed rubbed his tired eyes. What about the slingshot maneuver around Mars? That only works if they can reach escape velocity from Jupiter first, Martins replied. We're running out of time and options, sir. The doors slid open as Dr. Lee and Commander Tal entered, followed by Chief Engineers Wilson and Grell. Their faces told Reed everything he needed to know before they spoke. The modifications to the Lorcae engines have reached their limit, Wilson reported. We've pushed the integration of our technology as far as it can go. Grell's 4 arms moved in a gesture that Reed had learned indicated regret. The structural integrity of our vessels cannot withstand greater thrust without risking catastrophic failure. Reed stared at the display showing the 7 massive ships and their current positions. What about evacuating the 3 most vulnerable ships and concentrating power on the other 4? Tal shook his head. Each vessel contains irreplaceable cultural artifacts, genetic repositories, and historical records from our home world. Abandoning even one ship means losing part of who we are. The room fell silent as the impossible challenge settled over them. 30,000 lives hung in the balance, with time slipping away by the hour. Suddenly, Engineer Kumar, who had been quietly working at a secondary console, looked up. "What if we link the ships?" All eyes turned to him. "Explain," Reed said. Kumar moved to the main display. The Orcs ships have emergency docking capabilities designed to transfer population between vessels if one suffered critical failure. What if we use those to physically link all 7 ships in a line? Then we apply thrust from both ends. Wilson's eyes widened as he caught on. We could position our ships at the front and rear of their fleet. Our vessels are smaller but more maneuverable. If we use our engines in combination with theirs, would that provide enough thrust? Reed asked. Wilson and Grell exchanged glances before running calculations. "It's close," Wilson finally said. "But there's another problem. Our docking mechanisms weren't designed for this kind of stress. The connections might fail during maximum thrust. Then we need to reinforce them," Reed said. "Strip whatever materials we can from non-essential systems." Tal made a decision gesture. "We will do the same. The outer hull plates from our cargo sections can be repurposed." Reed nodded. "How long to implement this plan?" 18 hours minimum," Wilson replied. Martinez pointed to the trajectory display. "Jupiter's gravity will begin critical interference in 22 hours. Reed straightened his shoulders. "Then we have no time to waste. Sound general quarters. I want every available crew member ready for EVA operations in 30 minutes. Space around the Orcs fleet became a hive of activity. Humans in EVA suits worked alongside Orcs in their environmental gear, welding reinforcement plates across the docking connections between the massive ships. The human vessels positioned themselves at strategic points, the Horizon Asterisk, and 3 heavy transports at the front of the formation, while the engineering ships and remaining transports took up positions at the rear. Inside the lead Orcs ship, Officer Mick supervised the evacuation of sections that would be exposed to the greatest structural strain. "Move quickly," she told families carrying their possessions. "Take only what you need." A small Orcs child stopped before her, looking up with wide eyes. "Are we going to die?" Mick knelt down. "No, little one. The humans have a plan. They're very clever people. But they're so small," the child said innocently. Mick made the gesture for wisdom. "Size isn't everything. Sometimes the smallest creatures have the biggest hearts." In the Horizon's engine room, Chief Engineer Wilson and his team made final adjustments to the propulsion system. "We'll be pushing these engines 30% beyond their rated capacity," he warned. "Heat sinks will fail within minutes." "How long do we need?" Reed asked over the comm. 4 minutes at maximum thrust should be enough to change their trajectory," Wilson replied. "After that, we're looking at cascade failure." Reed's voice was steady. "Then we get 4 minutes and 5 seconds out of them." Wilson managed a tired smile. "Aye, Captain." As the final hour approached, Reed opened a channel to all ships, human and Orcs alike. "This is Captain Reed. In a few minutes, we will begin the most challenging maneuver any of us have ever attempted. The thrust will be violent. The strain on our ships will be at the edge of what they can bear." He paused. "But together, we will succeed. Human and Orcs, working as one fleet, one team, one hope. Stand by for countdown." As Jupiter's massive presence grew on the view screens, 30,000 Orcs and 500 humans prepared for the moment of truth. The final push that would determine the fate of 2 species now inextricably linked. "All ships report ready," Captain Martinez announced, her voice tight with tension. Reed took a deep breath and pressed the ship-wide comm. "All personnel, secure for maximum thrust in 3, 2, 1. Execute." The combined engines of 17 human vessels and 7 Orcs ships fired simultaneously. The linked fleet shuddered violently as tremendous forces pulled against the hastily reinforced connections. Warning alarms blared across every vessel as structural integrity sensors recorded dangerous strain levels. Hull stress at 92% of tolerance, reported the Horizon's systems officer. Engine temperature climbing rapidly. On the main view screen, Jupiter's massive form seemed to taunt them, its gravitational pull fighting against their desperate escape attempt. The linked ships crawled forward, gaining speed with agonizing slowness. 2 minutes of thrust completed. Martine is called out, checking the readouts. Engine temperature at critical levels. In the engine room, Wilson and his team fought to keep the overtaxed systems functioning. Coolant hissed from ruptured lines as technicians in heat-resistant suits rushed to seal them. Rerouting power through secondary systems, Wilson reported, his face dripping with sweat. We can give you another minute, maybe two. Aboard the lead Lorkai vessel, Commander Tal watched the trajectory calculations with all 4 eyes focused intently on the display. We're approaching the critical vector point, he told Reed over the comlink. Another 60 seconds of thrust should be sufficient. Hear that? Reed called to his crew. 60 more seconds. Give me everything you've got. The ship bucked beneath them, as if alive and in pain. Conduits burst overhead, showering sparks across the bridge. The view screen flickered as power fluctuated. 3 minutes, 30 seconds of thrust, Martins reported. Engine core reaching meltdown temperatures. Trajectory shift confirmed, came Engineer Kumar's steady voice. We're beginning to break free of Jupiter's gravity well. Reed leaned forward, eyes fixed on the navigation display. Keep pushing. We need more distance. 4 minutes of thrust, Martins announced. Engine safety systems are completely offline. Wilson's strained voice came through the comm. Captain, we need to shut down now or lose the engines completely. Reed hesitated for just a moment. 10 more seconds, then shut it down. All ships, prepare for thrust termination. Those final 10 seconds stretched like an eternity. The Horizon shook so violently that crew members had to hold onto their stations to stay upright. Then, finally, engines offline, Martins reported. All ships report thrust termination. A collective breath seemed to be held across the fleet as they waited for the trajectory calculations to stabilize. Kumar worked his console rapidly, then looked up with an expression of disbelief that slowly transformed into a wide smile. We did it, Captain. The fleet has cleared Jupiter's gravity well. New trajectory confirms we're on course for Mars orbital insertion in 47 days. The bridge erupted in cheers. Reed allowed himself a moment of relief before turning to the practical matters at hand. Damage reports from all vessels. Priority to life support systems. 3 weeks later, the combined fleet approached Mars. The red planet glowed against the blackness of space, a waypoint on their journey home. The emergency repairs had held, and with the immediate danger past, both species had begun to plan for their shared future. In the luminous journey's observation dome, Captain Reed stood with Commander Tal, watching as the Earth became visible, a small blue marble in the distance. My people have never seen a world like yours, Tal said. So much water, so much life. It seems almost unreal after generations in space. Reed nodded. The UN Security Council has officially approved the settlement plan. Titan will be designated as sovereign Lorkai territory, with a joint research base established for terraforming operations, and until Titan is habitable. The larger Lorkai ships will be positioned in Earth orbit as temporary habitats, Reed explained. We've already begun preparing the public for your arrival. Schools are developing exchange programs, and universities are creating special departments for interspecies studies. Tal made the Lorkai gesture of profound gratitude. From the brink of extinction to a new home, my people will never forget what humanity did for us. Reed smiled. This is just the beginning. Our scientists are already excited about the technological exchange possibilities. Your propulsion systems, our adaptability. Together we might reach stars neither of us could reach alone. A small group of human and Lorkai children entered the observation dome, part of the cultural exchange program that had spontaneously developed during the journey. They pointed excitedly at Earth, asking questions of their adult companions. "They will grow up together," Tal observed, "neither knowing a time when our species were strangers to each other." "That's the real victory here," Reed agreed. "Not just saving lives, but building a future neither of us could have imagined alone." As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Reed reflected on how quickly everything had changed. Just 1 month ago, humanity had gazed at the stars wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they prepared to welcome 30,000 new neighbors. The rescue that began as a humanitarian mission had transformed into something far more profound, the first chapter in humanity's membership in a wider galactic community. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them not as separate species, but as friends who had survived the impossible together.